So Sean Cooper, Regional Manager of Your Personal Training UK. I've actually been with YPT since the 1st of January 2014 as a PT, still a PT now at the age of 58. I know I don't look 58, thank you. But I've taken a massive advantage of the development for personal trainers that are quite successful that they can dip into. So I've actually been, I'm actually one of the tutor and assessors on our academy, so I go out and do the practical teaching for level 2s and level 3s and the assessing in the gyms. I took the opportunity to be a master PT as well. So with a vehicle, if the demand for you is such that you can't cope, you can bring in your own junior PTs to work underneath you to expand your business within hours, if that makes sense, across multiple sites, which I did. And then back in 2019, I started the regional manager's role, and I work up in the northern region, which is anything above the M4 to the tip of Scotland and out to Belfast under James, who you met yesterday. You already know that we're the UK's largest and most successful personal training brand, working out of excess of over 500 centres nationwide now, which is absolutely fantastic, and internationally with the contracts we've got out in some certain places, proud SimSpar and Active IQ partners, and our PTs have the ability to demand on average the highest earnings and career development, which is what I was just talking about, what I've taken advantage of. So what is Level Up? Why are we here? This is the brainchild of James Laurie, our co-owner, who you met yesterday speaking. He wanted a vehicle where he could empower our PT community and maybe the wider audience like yourselves with keeping us up to date, further education with the ever-evolving industry that we live in, and that's the reasons for Level Up. So basically, new approaches, new ideas, new innovations from fitness industry experts you can take away, upskill your own knowledge, and then take your business to the next level, hence the word Level Up. No more so than our next guest speaker. Now, I'm old. Every Christmas I look forward to the Wizard of Oz, okay, with old Alice and the Yellow Brick Road. Well, we don't have the Wizard of Oz here. What we've got is the Wizard of What Bike. So I'm going to hand you over to Luke, all right? And then Luke will, mate. And Luke will crack on and do his little bit.
So I basically look after anything south of Nottingham from a sales perspective and key account manager perspective, but obviously go into sites and do a lot of training with people like yourselves and even operators, owners, investors, that kind of thing. But like I said to you before, it's a case of I want you guys to utilise the bikes properly, because you will be faced with, when you go into clubs or you've got them in the clubs already, how do I utilise these actually for a demographic or for all the people that I have as clients? The key thing that I'm pushing at the minute is this health span test. So a lot of the talks, and if you came to Ollie Patrick's talk yesterday, they talk about longevity now. And the best predictor of longevity is VO2 max. Second being muscle mass. So there's other things that you'll see within clubs like body composition analyzers that you can utilise actually to benchmark people and move them forward in terms of their progress and what they're doing. And it's actually a tangible metric to say, like, 6 to 8 weeks time, you've got better with me, retain them as a client, but also the business retains them as a member as well. So they keep coming, and it's the same faces and the same trust in you guys as well. So effectively, a little bit about What Bike. Launched in 2008 in terms of British cycling endorsement. We were in the CrossFit Games in 2011 in one of the events. There's different What Bike zones throughout the country now. My most recent one I've been implementing is Everlast Gyms. So we're incorporated health span into their onboarding system. Launching our magnetic smart bike, which can be used with apps. So like you've got Zwift is probably the most used one that you see. But actually what the bike then does is it resists and adds more resistance if they're going up a climb. So it's quite a smart bike in terms of that aspect. We then sponsored the All Blacks for 12, 13 years, which was quite a cool partnership in general. And now effectively it's everything through the app or the new screens that we've got. So I'll show you a little bit on the PowerPoint with the new screen that we've got that you will eventually start to see compared to the old calculator looking models that I'm assuming you guys probably have. A lot more intuitive. If you pop down to the stand downstairs, I can show you a little bit more on that as well, or even have a go on the bike, see what you think, kind of thing. The bike doesn't really change. You can't really perfect something that's perfect already, other than changing it to a better, more usable, friendly screen. Other people we work with, obviously What Bike's seen as very much the elite bike, the best bike on the market. The likes of England Rugby I was with recently, Man City with their refurb, Loughborough Uni, 27 bikes across 2 different facilities, as well as 2 in their aerobic testing hub as well. So massive plethora of professional sport brands that use us. as well as then from a commercial perspective, the likes of Third Space, your Pure Gyms, David Lloyd's, Fitness First, even Bupa and Nuffield Health, though, obviously, from a gym perspective, Nuffield utilise the bikes, but then they use us in their cardiorespiratory fitness testing as well. So cardiology-wise, they've got an onboarding that's, okay, £350, but it's a full health assessment, and the actual health span test is utilised in that actual clinical testing. Different product ranges, so you've got the home range, which people use and obviously buy for home use. So the Proton is newly released, the Atom, which is very much for cycling purists, your triathletes, your cyclists, whereas then the Atom X and the Air Pro is what you will come across now, because the Pro and the Trainer with the old calculator model is, you still see them, they're 15 years old and still work perfectly. But the screens have now been updated to go onto the Air Pro, and Atom X is that smart bike, but we've actually got then a bigger Android screen on it as well. But they're different types of resistance basically. So Atom X is magnetic resistance, whereas Air Pro is dual. So you've got air resistance and magnetic resistance on that as well. So basics wise, I'm going to cover how to set a bike up, and it applies not just to a watt bike, it applies to any other bike, spin bike, whatever that is. Performance touchscreen, obviously, like I said, if you want to look at that even more in detail, come down to the stand and I'll quite happily show you what's on it. And then I'll show you a little bit with regards to the app, and because there's only two of you, I can actually just come over to you and show you the app realistically. So what we're looking to do from a ride setup wise, people will get on and think they're comfortable. They might put the handlebars too high and they'll sit upright, like you'll probably see from like a sit-up, techno gym, life fitness cycle, potentially in the gym, that someone will turn on, watch Netflix, not prime themselves for a workout on their phone and probably not even get out of zone one. But effectively what we're looking to do is actually prevent injury. So take the strain off, whether that's lower back, and I'll explain how that does that in just a moment. But it's all to do with then efficiency on the bike as well. Am I using the right muscle groups from a leg perspective to power that full rotation each side? And we can then actually look at balance, rehabilitation, which leg are they putting more power through. So with Sean, actually, we had a discussion, and Sean plays cricket, but he was putting too much power through a certain leg. And now through using the watt bike, he's actually now can close his eyes and get a 50-50 balance and realise that now I'm putting the right amount of power through each leg and actually getting the right, it's called polar view, which again, I'll go through shortly. Setup is super simple. So the first thing we do is get the right saddle height. Rule of thumb is the bony part of your hip, okay? Simple as that. It's very rough, and if things do need adjusting after, that's fine if someone's not comfortable, but it's bony part of your hip, okay? Then handlebars, exactly the same height as the saddle, okay? What we're then looking to do though is actually have the right distance from the saddle to the handlebars as well. So the best way of doing it, elbow on the edge of the seat, fingertips to the handlebars, and obviously if they're a little bit too far in front, bring them back. What I'm doing first, I'm having the saddle at the front of the stem. So there's a kind of a stem that you can slide it forwards and backwards. I have the seat at the front, and then the handlebars then from there, and we can see what happens from that aspect. Once we've done that, we get them on the bike, and what we're looking for is a 90-degree angle from femur to torso, as well as then from torso to humerus as well. So you can almost fit a box. If we were sat kind of like that, we can fit a box through that hole, and that's pretty much an effective ride style. The only other thing I'm then doing is, we can't really see it on the screen, but there is a little cross on the bikes, and it's where the middle of the crank and the pedal meets that cross. And what I'm looking at when I'm in that position and I have one foot in front of the other, that the outside of my knee on my lateral ligament is in line with the crank where the pedal meets, okay? Because that's when we're going to get the most efficient rotation, or the cadence and the effective muscle groups working in the right way. Performance touchscreen then, so it's brand new, LCD, swipe through, click through, press a button. It's just a lot more user friendly than if you have used a watt bike in the past. You had to put your weight in before even starting. Obviously, most people, even myself, before working for watt bike, I'd just do a Just Ride, and everything would be done through my app, whereas actually you can program some stuff into the old monitors, but it was so hard to actually work and even see the screen in some aspects that you were better just connecting your app to the old B monitors. So the new ones are way more intuitive. It's all touchscreen. You click through distance, power, speed. I didn't even realise before working for watt bike that you could do a calorie workout on it, because there's people that do things like 21, 15, 9 from a CrossFit aspect. I can do that from a watt bike, but actually get more metrics and then do my zone 2 rides and whatever other rides I want to do on it. Whereas a C2 bike, great bikes, don't get me wrong, but it's very much based on a jump on, I'll do 500 meters here, 21 calories here kind of thing. So I'm going to utilize the watt bike more effectively for other rides and assess people and test people as well. A little bit about the air bikes anyway. So what I'm looking to do is exhaust air before I start touching magnets with the dual resistance, but it's instant resistance and it's actually more controllable in terms of air. We can look at our power output in terms of, is this hard? No. Start to move the air, is that getting harder? And it's a more gradual intensity to that air resistance. And that's when we start to switch over to magnet. If you've exhausted that air resistance, that's when you can start to play around with the magnet. There's two different types of bike though. They look the same, but the gearing's slightly different. So the old model used to be trainer or pro. Trainer is lower gearing. So if you exhausted the air and got up to a 10, that would only be a 5 on a pro. So my issue when I was actually training on a watt bike, I wasn't sure which bike I needed to go on because it was a David Lloyd's, had 2 trainers and 1 pro, but I was used to using all the metrics from a pro perspective and didn't know what I needed from a trainer perspective. Now I do know, I know that I'd have to exhaust it and start to turn the magnet, but I didn't like touching the magnet because it was a different kind of resistance. So I'd always wait for the pro, 20, 30 minutes, sometimes you'd sit in the sofa and have to wait for the pro. So it's good knowing that. And on the new bikes, it's literally a case of, there's a sticker on the stem that says low or high. If it's high gearing, obviously it makes sense. If it's a low gearing, it's lower gearing. We discussed the touchscreen. Workouts I'll show you when we get to the app stuff, and I'll show you the testing as well, because there's a couple of tests. So the health span I've already kind of touched upon, but there's also a 6-second power test as well, which is a really good one for coaches to use, rather than 1 rep max testing, especially with an older demographic. Are we going to put someone 50, 60 years old through 1 rep max squat, 1 rep max deadlift? Probably not. And they can do, everyone, other than if we've got disabilities, can jump on a bike and turn over as hard as they can for 6 seconds. So app-wise, there's plenty in there, okay? There's a certain amount of stuff that's on the new screens as well in terms of testing. So there's that 6-second power test that obviously I've just discussed. The differences in terms of what we're looking at on a screen. We can look at distance, speed, calories, power. We can look at just the heart rate. We look at cadence. But through the app, and I'll come over and show you rather than showing it on the screen. Have either of you actually got the app? No. No, all good. So, yeah, all good. Well, no, it's all right. So, home screen, these are the bits that we get from a testing perspective. So there's heart rate, power per kilo, which is what you get from that 6-second power test, and it's a good one that has a massive correlation with 1 rep max testing. So at the start of a block, if we say we got 2.99, I've sent them away 6-week block, and at the end of that block, we then retest, and that's gone up. We've not had to set up a squat for 20, 30 minutes to do 1 rep max. We've done 6 seconds and shown them that this correlation shows that your peak power has increased. Thus, your 1 rep max should have increased for squat and deadlift.
More effective and safer.
Exactly. FT3 is functional threshold power. It's the amount of watts you should be able to hold for an hour based on continuous cycling, rowing, ski erg, whatever that is. But we can apply that to other devices. It's not just being used from a watt bike perspective. We can then apply things from the testing that we've done to our Hyrox athletes, to our triathletes, whatever that is, and give them an idea and educate them on wattage rather than zone 2 heart rate or any of that stuff. And that's just your amount of sessions. Health span I'll touch upon in more detail, but you've got different workouts that can be utilised instead of spending time on, because if we're spending time on strength programming with a client, but we still want them to get a little bit of cardio in, we can point them in the direction of the app then. So there's plenty of workouts. There's these Fit in 25s, beginner, intermediate, which are 13-week programs that will develop and increase their aerobic capacity, as well as different things like warm-ups. One of the most used protocols on a watt bike is a 10-minute warm-up, but it primes someone for a lower body workout or work out more efficiently than sitting on a life fitness upright cycle watching Netflix for 10 minutes or walking on the treadmill. So it will gradually ramp them up to an intensity that they can then start to run in a Hyrox workout or to go over and do the ski or whatever that is. The quick ride function is as simple as that's what connects to the screen. So hitting watt bike, if there was, I wonder if it'd pick it up. It's probably too far away, but the 2 bikes would pop up that are downstairs, click that and we're connected, and we can start laps by pressing play. It'll connect to the screen, count down from 5, start your workout. So even if we haven't set up a custom workout that can be done on the screen, we can do 2 minutes on, hit the plus, it'll show you that you've got 30 seconds rest, hit the plus again, that's your continuous time, and it'll take you through lap 1, lap 2. So like sessions I used to do were 2 minutes on, 30 seconds off at a certain wattage, increase that for the next 3 rounds, but I could press plus on the older models anyway. The good thing is obviously on the new screen, we can program that in. So that's that. The next one is there's plans as well. Rugby plans, they're all free. Well, most of them are free to use. There is a subscription model, but again, I'll touch upon health span. But once you've completed a health span, these are the tests that you can do, or the plan that you can do to increase your VO2 max without me having to program cardio for someone. Again, if they've come in, we're doing the parkour while they're on the bike. What is it you want? I want to gain strength. Well, I'm just going to point them in the direction of the app if they do want to do any cardio or spiritual fitness workouts. So it's pretty easy to use, and then that's all your history. So you can see everything you've done, and when I do eventually touch on the health span stuff, it gives you all this information, which to start with is a little bit scary, but there's only certain bits that you need to pick out for your everyday demographic, because some of the other stuff is only going to be used then for pro sport. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Any questions?
No.
Cool.
Covered all bit.
Do you set it to a certain strength when using the bike, or is it one of them where you start pedaling and then is that how it works out?
Yeah, you can't. You gauge it yourself realistically. So that's that part about the air. Yeah. So you can start setting. It's all to do with that air resistance basically. Everyone knows how hard they're working. If we want to start using RPE scale, we can, and we can say, right, we want RPE for 2 minutes at 7 or 8, and then come down to an RPE of 2 or 3 to turn over 30 seconds. But it's just a case of then actually all it is just adjusting the air for that power exertion. You can see all the power on the screen, or cadence. So cadence is a good one to go by and set cadence targets. We're looking for them to turn over about 80 to 100 RPM. And that's a good one for them to be like, I'm working effectively, rather than turning over at 60. They're not working hard enough to get an effective workout in. Or if they're turning over too much, yes, it's sprint workouts, but then we're not going to push them for as long as 2 minutes doing more than maybe 100 RPM. Does that make sense?
I've got the old displays in the gym I'm in. It's a pain in the bum. So I use my MyZone.
Yeah.
So I've got that in front of me, so I know what percentage I'm working, and so I get to use to the wattage for that.
That's it.
My energy levels.
And the more you use it, the more you'll get used to that and seeing the different correlations with things. Like you can turn, like you could be on a 5 on the air resistance, and it'll turn over at a certain wattage, and then you ramp that up to 10, and you'll see the wattage increase. But then you'll see obviously their exertion increase as well, and how hard they're working. So it's just a case of how that person is feeling on the bike, and it's very individual. We've already discussed the resistance part of things, but then polar view wise, that's where we can look at balance. So I'll explain that to you, and then a little bit more. Well, we kind of touched upon the testing, but I'll go into more detail about the health span stuff that we're looking at the minute as well, and integration with, like Sean's already mentioned, the MyZone. I've mentioned Zwift already, the app we've just been through as well, but we integrate with anything. The only people that don't want to connect his Apple Watch, unfortunately. I found out yesterday that you actually have to pay to unlock it for it to connect to some of the ANT monitors. And I was like, oh, makes sense, but you've got a lot of competitors on the market now that your Whoops, your Garmin's, they're all open. So it's interesting. This is a drill that I do with people when I do the training. So I've obviously mentioned about air resistance and trying to exhaust air before touching the magnet. So the drill that I do with people is air gearing I set to 1 and magnetic resistance I set to 1, which is obviously very easy gearing. And please do come down and have a go if you want to. So we turn over and show 80 cadence. This is what you're exerting from a watts perspective, all right, which is what then shows on the right hand side what the air resistance is showing, what cadence we're hitting versus then hitting the same amount of wattage, all right. I then show people increase the air resistance to a 5, but actually then start to increase the magnetic resistance as well. So you get an idea of at 5, this is how it feels and how air resistance feels, versus then applying a magnet resistance, okay? Air at 10, magnetic resistance at 7. Again, if you did want to have a go, it's really interesting. But then what I then do, as well as this slide, is I actually then completely turn off that magnet resistance. So you get an idea of how much nicer air resistance is before starting to apply the magnets. And the people that I'm realistically, especially on a high or a pro, I'm not even, personally myself, I'm not touching the magnet. I'm only up to about 5 or 6 on air resistance. It's then the cyclists that know even more about their training, that have specific programs from triathlon coaches, from cycling coaches, where they then need to apply different things based on if they're starting to climb up a hill, if I'm starting to free ride, what is it that I need to turn over at? And it's way more above my knowledge as well, being the wizard of what bike, but those coaches know way more than me on triathlon and cycling themselves, okay? I've got the tool that helps them do that, but they're the guys that know exactly how to program it, okay? So come down and have a go if you want to. Obviously, if there's other talks and stuff, don't, but please do come in and see what the resistance bits are. We don't need to have a break because there's not enough people in it. Oh, clickers stopped working. There we go. So, polar view is what we call it. When I first used a watt bike, it was called the peanut to me.
It was called what?
The peanut.
Right, okay.
The figure of 8. But effectively, we can see if someone's ride setup's correct from what we said at the start of the training. But we can also look to see if the balance is correct and if they're using the right muscle groups efficiently. Okay, so very little carryover. So what you've got is certain stages of a rotation, all right, and what muscle groups are being used. But the pinch in the middle is where we then transition to the other leg. So when we're at the top of our rotation, that's where both hip flexors are realistically, one's completely extended, one's completely contracted, and we're obviously not got as much power, but that's where we start to transfer to the other leg, which is when we then engage the quads, which is your biggest part of the push, which is then this big circle, for it to then come round where we start to engage and contract the hamstring, for it to pull round into the next leg. Does that make sense? So that middle part is the least amount of power where we've got the transition. But what we can see is where we're losing that power. So this is effectively what we're looking for. Yes, we've not got as much power going through to the next leg, and it's the least kind of amount of power that's going through it, but we're turning over and transitioning effectively, as opposed to we're losing a lot of power and then not re-engaging the quad properly. But what it then also shows is if we've got their bike set up correctly, because what we'll then see is you'll see the peanut or the figure of 8 start to change in terms of orientation. If we haven't got it directly associated in that diagonal cross section, the seat might be too high, the handlebars might be too far in front of us, and you'll start to see the shapes change. And without then that education, you don't know that. But from seeing and utilising that polar view, we can do that. But the other thing we can also do, and I can show you mine, I really struggle to cycle now because I've got a bad Achilles, but mine actually then, as it comes round from the right leg, it kinks out. But it's a good one again from an assessment point of view. We don't necessarily need to start asking them about their medical history, sitting them down on a sofa like in the past we've done to do the Park U. We can get them on the bike, we can get them warmed up doing the health span test, give them a VO2 max, but actually then start to ask them the why they're there, because we've got past that barrier of them stepping in through the front door, if it's a completely new member, but it's actually, why am I here? Is it to build muscle mass? Is it to feel better about myself? Is it to lose body fat mass? I'm going on holiday. What's their why? But I've got them stuck on a bike doing a benchmarking assessment rather than using the word test, and I can ask those questions and then ask them about injury. I can see that you've got a kink here, or I can see that your right leg is more dominant than your left leg. What's going on there? And ask all these questions and be intuitive as a coach to then be more effective as a coach as well and show them that I'm valuable for what I'm doing for you. Yeah? So these were the power transfer, or the stages that I was saying about that full rotation. So phase 1, top of the pedal stroke, hip flexors, okay? Biggest part, phase 2, where we're engaging the quad. Phase 3, that drag back. So we're going to push the heel through, start to engage our hamstrings and start dragging that back. But by then, the other leg's taken over. So again, it's got the most powerful part of the other leg. And phase 4, we're back at that top of the transition into the next leg. But that's what then creates that polar view. So it gives you that idea of where the most amount of power is coming through, that transition into the next leg with that power, which creates a full rotation. Yeah?
That makes so much more sense.
I know. That's why I try and leave that till the last bit, because it's a bit, it's kind of, you get it, and then bam, it's there. Any questions on that?
Can I take a picture?
Please, yeah.
I think the interesting thing on that there is when we were talking, Luke, is I don't have cycle shoes, so I don't clip in to that pedal. So I lose, when we get down to the bottom, I lose the engagement of the hammies and the glute on that pull while I'm pushing there, so the push and pull. So I have a lot of, it's all quad push, so my there's not much carryover, so that where you've got that big bit there, I'm actually more or less closed because I'm not using
Sean
this
will be
so
more probably like that one.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go as far as that one because
no,
like you said, with
it's
the
probably more the middle one there. But the great thing is I've managed to balance out my quads in 2 months, which I think is great.
And then if you come down, I'll show you something else as well with regards to, you don't always get, well, there's a lot of times you won't see that figure through someone cycling, and I'll show you why when we're downstairs if you pop down. So for that polar view, but considerations and knowledge in terms of getting that efficient rotation and power. Setup, so like we said about the differences in terms of height of the saddle and the handlebars, distance from seat to handlebars as well, but also that their seat and handlebars are in the right position horizontally as well. Footwear, like Sean's just said, makes a massive difference, but not everyone's going to be a keen cyclist and have cleats. But it's just a case of actually there is caging on the pedals, but rather than turning that over, not putting the foot in the cage and their foot being on the wrong part of the pedal is again going to cause injury, uncomfort, and most importantly, it's going to actually steer them away from using that bike when it's a great tool for them to use. So, health span test. It's like I said, it's the key thing I'm pushing at the minute. So, it's not really, we've had it for about 6 or 7 years, that we've just rebranded it. So it was something called a sub-maximal ramp test. So what would happen is you would get on the bike, and over the course of X amount of period of time, you'd start on a certain watts and you would increase that watts every minute until you got to an RP of 7. Okay, so that's why it's sub-maximal rather than maximal, or 85% of your max heart rate, only using to start with the very usual 220 minus your age. But once you've actually done the health span, it will give, and if you're wearing a third party or the Whoop, it would give them a more accurate max heart rate and a more accurate 85%, which I can show you in the app again. So effectively, there's so many studies around VO2 max, it's ridiculous. I really love watching Ollie and listen to all his podcasts and recommend his podcast massively because he dumbs it down for people like me. But the one thing I always take away is you increase your VO2 max by 1 milliliter, you live for 45 days longer on this planet. Proven research. And I'm going to apply that into my coaching. Okay. So just through doing ideally 10 minutes on the bike at the start of a block, and then re-examining, assessing, testing at the end of the block to show someone that that's increased, I have helped in your longevity, health span. I've helped you live more effectively, or your quality of life has improved, and we'll still maintain that or make it better through using me as a coach. Okay. Ideally, we want them on the bike for at least 6 minutes to register a result. If they can't do 6 minutes, basically they can't do a brisk walk. So that's pretty alarming in the first place. Scores that are then given after. So VO2 max is the measurement, but the reason I talk about VO2 max is because that's what everyone's talking about. But VO2 max measures something called cardiorespiratory fitness, or CRF. But it's how strong your heart and your lungs are, and how that's converting oxygen into your blood to provide your muscles with oxygen. Okay. We don't need to give them that science behind it though, or go into too much science. We just literally go, if we improve this figure, you will live longer. It's that simple. By 1 milliliter, if you want to start then going into, or they ask questions, that's when we start to educate them a little bit more. Or they might not have even done the health span check with you, but they've got a wearable. So they're going to come and ask you, oh, VO2 max, yes, it gives them a little bit of information, but they want to speak to a person about it. They want to get face to face with someone. On the actual screen and in the app, it explains how to use it as well, because it asks you for your weight, age, gender, and then your activity level. So there's beginner, active, very active, and then it starts to go into cycling terms as well. So I will only put myself down as very active because I'm not a cyclist, so I'm not going to start putting club, elite, all that kind of stuff in, because I'm not. Confidence in terms of programming as well. So you can say, actually, if we're only at a beginner stage, I know they've said they're a beginner, but we can see what that VO2 max or CRF score was. It will give them a scale as to how good their cardiorespiratory fitness was as well, and then we can program based on the load from there. So if someone's got a high VO2 max, I'm going to be able to push them more. If it is cardio workouts, high rocks workouts, whatever it is they want to do with you, or even if it's from a strength perspective and their VO2 max is high, we know that they can actually do the weights that they say they can do, or we can push them a little bit more than maybe they say they think they can do. So it gives us a great benchmark or tool to use to say, I can push this person, or I want to start really simple with this person, and then progressive overload, etc. with them. Yeah? Cool. We'll skip past that one. Talked about CRF enough, but effectively it's that 1 milliliter, 45 days. I don't need to give them too much behind the science of it. We're looking to kind of retest every 6 to 8 weeks. 8 weeks is probably better because we can show them a better improvement. Things like body composition analyzers, we're probably looking to do about every 4 weeks. So you can do maybe 3 body compositions and then re-engage then on that second or third touch point to do a VO2 max or health span assessment. It's a good one in terms of actually that second or third touch point though, because the hardest part is, yes, you've got in front of them the first time from an induction perspective or whatever that is, but then what's that then next point of contact that we've got, and then retaining them as a client, because we need to get in front of them. There was a great talk that I went to recently that was about retention as well, and they said that keeping someone as a client for longer only involves 2 meaningful conversations. And it might have been said yesterday in one of the talks. And someone then said, what's a meaningful conversation? Hello, how are you? Mm. And then the second conversation is, as they're leaving, you say, how was your session? When am I going to see you again? Oh, I'll see. And it gives them onus on coming back. But we can do that then, saying, right, we've done the first lot of benchmarking. I'll see you in 4 to 6 weeks. And you've got them on the bike and asking them how their week's been and all that kind of stuff. It's another touch point for us to get in front of and softly sell our product. Oh, we've stopped clicking again. We're back. Why use the watt bike for it though? Precise control, like we've already discussed with everything we've just been through. The unique pedal technique, and I'd like to think most people have learned to ride a bike, and it's the feel of the bike. The bike has been vigorously tested to be exactly like a road bike. Personalised zones, so the thing I'm then using from that as well, if we have used a third party heart rate monitor, is it's going to give them max heart rate and their heart rate zones for training. Everyone's banging on about zone 2 training at the minute, so we can give them what their zone 2 is. But the good thing about the watt bike as well, it gives them their zone training as a wattage as well. So again, I'm not just using the watt bike for my programming, I can apply zone 2 watts to a ski, to a row, whatever that is, and then actually I can see it on the screen as a wattage, because not everyone's going to remember to bring the heart rate monitor. If I'm on a ski and I've only got my heart rate on my Apple Watch that isn't connected to my PM5, I'm not going to be going like that and then looking at my watch to see what my zone 2 is. So I know that from that and that zone analysis, once doing the health span, I can apply that to programming as well. What it then does though, like I said, is it will give them a 13-week plan to improve VO2 max. And if they're what they want to see you from your coaching perspective, from a strength aspect, we're programming their weights. We can still point them in the direction of the app to still improve their VO2 max during that period, but you don't need to program that, because when they come and see you, they want to do bench or they want to do whatever it is. We can point them in the direction of the other 4 days that they are saying they're coming to the gym. Here's what you can do, and here's the tools that you can utilize to do that. Oh, we're back. So that there it is, gender, weight, fitness level. We can put that in on the app or on the new screens. Obviously, you can input that on the new screens. Cool, clicker didn't like me today. We're back again.
James.
It's all right, it's going again.
Oh, okay.
And it'll give them these figures as well in terms of, like I said, with the activity that they're doing as well. And then go into what the cycling groups are. But I'm putting myself in as intermediate or advanced, and then I'm not putting myself in as club, because it will assume that I'm a much better cyclist than I am. God, there's a lot of screens on health span. We've just gone through it all. I get ahead of myself, that's the thing. These are the metrics that you'll see from the app though. So that's that cardiorespiratory fitness score. Okay, so 50%, and it will give them that scale once they've completed the test on the screen to show where that sits for their age and gender, which is why we've asked them for age and gender. like I showed you in the app, there's a lot of information there. We don't necessarily need to utilise it all for that everyday demographic, okay? So cardiorespiratory fitness, we're looking at VO2 max absolute and VO2 max relative. So VO2 max relative is then why we've put the weight in, and then from using that third party heart rate monitor, that's then giving us zones as watts and heart rate zones on the right hand side, okay? So that's what I'm then applying to that zone 2, or what is that I need to apply to a ski, a row, whatever it is that I'm programming for a zone 4 or 5 workout. So it's what I can get as a coach as well to enable me to program more effectively, as well as using, obviously, heart rate zones as well. Biggest cause, highest cause of death at the minute, cardiovascular disease. So that's why we're pushing this VO2 max so much. Yes, people can do it elsewhere using gas chamber analysis. Our test is within 2% of gas chamber analysis. Again, there's research papers to show that. There's other tests on the bike that we can use to assess VO2 max as well. But the HealthSpan one is the one that's got low barrier to entry and non-invasive, because it's realistically built in as part of a warm-up. We've got a 3-minute test, which I'm going to use maybe for myself or Sean, or maybe even the likes of you guys, because I know I can put you through your paces. It's a much shorter period of time, and it's just as hard as you can go for 3 minutes. But it's much quicker for me to then get into my session as well. I'll send this through to you so you can have a little read of it, but it's just a little bit more data around cardiovascular disease, basically. Heart rate we discussed. I get way ahead of myself when I do the presentations. I do it all the time. I just end up talking. And
that's what passion's all about. Yeah.
The plans that it then gives you, though, like I showed you, you've got beginner 1, beginner 2, intermediate or advanced, but it's based on that CRF score that they get. If it's low, not ideal, but we want to build that pretty quickly. So it's going to give them a more achievable target to hit, and then we'll retest at the end of that 13-week block. So beginner, and then it will say which one you should be using based on your CRF score. So it's nice and easy to use, simple as that, and program from. That's it.